Good evening to you all and welcome to our careers presentation. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we aren't in a position to offer our usual 6-year parents' night. We hope that this slideshow presentation will support informed conversations between you and your daughters so as to help them to plan their next step after the Leaving Cert. In our presentation today, we will look at key issues for this year, including the various dates and deadlines involved in applications. We look at what's involved in the CAO application process, the point system, and how to deal with offers within the CAO system. We look at the cost of living away from home and living at home while attending college. We'll explore the various student supports that are available, grants, access schemes, scholarships, and the disability schemes that are in place. We'll also look at some non-CAO routes, for example, FETAC progression schemes, and then we'll finally introduce you to a series of websites that will help you to explore some of the areas for yourself. So what are the options for our students after they leave school? Generally speaking, we look at higher education. So college is offering courses at level 6, 7 and 8. We look at the application process that's involved in making an application to the CAO, which is then transferred to colleges who make offers back to the students through the CAO. We mention applications to colleges in the UK and also across Europe. Not everyone wants to go to college, however, and for some people the best step is to look at further education as a bridge between secondary school and college or university. Within that group, some students will want to make that progression on to third level. Others will be quite happy to take their training at further education level and then move into the workforce. So we look at colleges offering post-leaving cert courses or PLC courses. We'll also look at what levels those courses are at they level 5 or level 6? And we look at how to make applications to those colleges. Students Leaving Cert will be familiar with talking about different course levels, but for parents it's perhaps useful to look at the National Framework for Qualifications. So looking at this arc, we can broadly say that at Junior Cert level we're dealing with level 3, and at Leaving Cert, both pass and honours level, we're dealing with level 4 and 5. Now, as we move to a PLC course or a post-Leaving Cert course, that bridge takes the students from level 5 to equivalent courses in level 5 and then to level 6 courses. So PLC courses tend to be level 5 and level 6. As we move into third level and away from further education, we look at level 6 courses, which would be higher certificates. We look at level 7, which would be ordinary bachelor's degrees, and level 8, which would be honours bachelor degrees or higher level degrees. Level 9 tends to be postgraduate qualifications at masters and postgraduate diplomas, and level 10 then would be doctorates. So generally speaking, we're looking at post-Leaving Cert, we're looking at level 5 and 6 in PLC courses, and we're looking at levels 6, 7 and 8 at third level for higher certificates, ordinary level degrees and honours degrees. That's important to keep in mind as we go through the presentation talking about different courses at different levels. So in this slide, let's look at some important dates. The British equivalent of the CAO is called the UCAS system, and it opened on the 8th of September of this year. The earliest closing date for courses there is the 15th of October, and that involves deadlines for medicine, dentistry and veterinary medicine, and also for colleges such as Oxford and Cambridge. The general closing date for the UCAS application system is the 15th of January 2021, so just after Christmas. And so it's important for students who are interested in applying for the UK, who at this stage would have been in touch with us, to take responsibility and to fill out the form, which is a quite involved form for their application. That form then is processed by the guidance counsellors within the school, getting references and making sure the person statements of the students are in place, and finally submitting the form to UCAS for them. The second deadline we're looking at is the 5th of November, and that's the opening date for CAO applications, which is the Irish College third level college application system. And that system closes on the 1st of February. So there's quite a bit of time before that closing date, and we'll look at that shortly. The third area that our students would be interested in would be making applications to PLC colleges, and I've taken an example of Waterford College of Further Education, which is our local PLC college, and I've put it on the brochure. Waterford College of Further Education tend to open their applications around December, January, and they then have a series of interviews based on those applications, and they make provisional offers to students on condition that they fulfill certain entry requirements in their actual Leaving Cert and Leaving Cert Applied. So parents and students need to be watching the PLC website for Waterford College of Further Education, or other PLC courses for that matter, so as to get the application in on time. Both their guidance counsellors will be watching that and will be flagging it for them as it happens. Now let's look at some of the anticipated dates for the state exams and assessments, and for some of our in-house assessments. The first, perhaps big exam that the girls will be involved in will be the pre-exams. And while our start date is not yet confirmed, we do know that those exams will finish on the 12th of February 2021. So students can anticipate a schedule working back from that date, and fairly shortly we'll be in a position to confirm the start date for those exams. Now, generally in March and April, based on previous history, we would have the practical exams in practical subjects, and we'd also have the oral exams in the languages. And that hasn't been confirmed yet as a date, but we can reasonably expect that it would happen in March and April. And finally, the Leaving Cert itself, the first date for that has been set, and that date is Wednesday, the 9th of June 2021. So this summer on the 9th of June is the proposed start date. So let's look at some more dates for your diary. In this case, we're looking at here the Higher Education Access Routes application. That's the National Access application process, and also the DARE application process, which is the Disability Access Routes to Education, again another national application process. The first date involved in this process is the 11th of January, and that's an Here and There application information evening or application days, which will be flagged for parents so as to help them to become more informed of what's involved in the application process. So it's important to mark those dates and to be ready for them, and to be in a position to log in to those conversations which are there to help you and support you in helping your daughter to make an application for either Here or There. The next date of significance is the closing date for the CAO, and that's the 1st of February. So students need to have some courses on their form at that point. They may not be their final selection, but having courses on the form at that stage helps to concentrate the mind. It helps them to begin to think about the reality of what it might mean to be on a course like that next year. And that ongoing process of reflection continues until the change of mind opens at the beginning of May, and they're in a position to change those courses as many times as they like, up to the beginning of July for free. So the 1st of February. The 1st of March then is the final date for completion of the Here and There application forms, which are part of the CAO application process. Finally, on the 15th of March, students need to have had their documentation submitted to the CAO in order to be considered for the application process for Here and There. If that documentation doesn't reach the CAO before the 15th of March, their application will be deemed to be null and void, and realistically appealing it won't be successful because they haven't met the deadline. So the deadline is sacrosanct in this situation, and they're expected to meet those deadlines. They're expected to have their documentation in place. And this is where you as a parent play an important role in discovering what documentation you need to have in place, in applying for it now while there's plenty of time, so as to have it in place and to remove any type of stress that may emerge if that documentation isn't available to the students on time for their application to take place. So some very important work for parents here. So you've heard me mention the HERE scheme, the Higher Education Access Routes to Education scheme, a number of times so far in this presentation. So what is the HERE scheme? Well, the HERE scheme is a support scheme for students applying to third level education who would have the motivation and the ability to attend third level but may lack some of the social or economic supports for various reasons. So who is eligible to apply? The students or children of those who are long-term unemployed, those students coming from families with low income, so therefore they must be within the Irish Grant income threshold limits. Families who have a very little tradition of progression to third level are also within the target group, and socioeconomic groups who are underrepresented in third level are also within the target group. Many of the colleges that our girls would be interested in applying to are within the HERE scheme. So you can see above a number of the colleges that are involved. It's worth considering that students who apply and who are accepted onto the scheme get very valuable supports. This can vary across different colleges, but generally speaking, the financial support is in the region of €1,000 a year. They're taken onto the course and given an orientation program. This orientation program is crucial because it involves compulsory attendance at orientation so as to be confirmed on the access program. And student spaces can be withdrawn if they don't attend the orientation program. So that's very important. The students haven't planned holidays or celebrations at a time when that orientation program might be taking place. Students are also supported with personal guidance and academic and social supports, and they have access to additional extra tuition. Now, while students become very enthusiastic about this and about the fact that they get a discount on their points, they do have to get in excess of 90% of the required points in order to take on the course. So what eventually happens is that students apply through the CAO. If they're accepted onto the HERE scheme, they then compete for a series of course places which are ring-fenced for HERE applicants, and in the same way for DARE applicants. So they're in a restricted pool within the general CAO system. And so that's a competitive process. So the highest qualified candidates who are applying through HERE for those spaces will get those spaces. So there's no sense in which, because a discount is given, that we can be complacent about the results of the Leaving Cert. It is still a competitive process within the access scheme. Now, in applying for this scheme, it's crucial that the correct steps are taken, as I've already suggested. Students must have applied by the 1st of February on the drop-down menu on the CAO for HERE or DARE. They must have their financial documentation in place, ready to go, and have the form completed by the 1st of March. That documentation then must reach the CAO before the 15th of March. In fact, we like to say to the students that there's actually one date, and that date is the 1st of March. So if you think in terms of having the form completed by the 1st of February and the documentation gone by the 1st of March, then we should be in a fairly secure situation to say that students have done their part of the application process, and then that documentation will be assessed for suitability, and students will be informed then as to whether they have been successful in applying to get onto the HERE or DARE scheme. Okay, so I've laid out the exact timeline over the next couple of slides for what's involved in an application for HERE, and in fact it's the same timeline for DARE. So from the beginning of November, in fact our girls already have the CAO handbooks, which are also available to you online. So they get those handbooks and they have them available to them from the beginning of November. The CAO system opens on the 5th of November. Parents are advised to review the HERE handbook, which is available online, to guide their daughters in making a CAO application between the November and the 1st of February period, to fill in the HERE application form on the CAO form, to set about gathering your supporting documentation so as to have that in place, remembering that this can take several weeks to issue, and so it's not something that should be left to the last minute, and to finally make sure to apply to the CAO before the 17:15 deadline on the 1st of February. The 1st of March then is the deadline for completing the HERE and DARE application forms in the online CAO form, and to have gathered all the supporting documentation so as to send off to support your application. Remembering that is the 15th of March deadline to have that documentation in, but we're saying the 1st of March. So the 1st of March is complete the form and send off the documentation. So that's part of your role as a parent. The students are doing their role, studying away, working hard, and you need to be in the loop and to be efficient in gathering that documentation for them so as to have it ready for their application. So the next part of this process, as we've already said, is that by the 15th of March the documentation needs to be in the CAO offices in Galway so as to be considered a legitimate application. Now, in submitting this documentation, you have to remember that you're asked to send copies of the documentation, not the originals, and that you're asked to keep all of the originals so as you have them for reference purposes. Make sure that the copies you make are clear and easily to read. Make sure that you number each page and write your CAO application number and the date on the front of each page. This will prove that if a sheet is lost in the application process, because they're numbered sequentially, that page was included. It's not possible to fax or email documents. They need to be copied, clearly filed and posted to the CAO. It is most advisable to get a certificate of post from An Post every time you post supporting documentation to the CAO so that you have a record of postage. And in order to get confirmation that the documents you posted arrived in the CAO, it is also advisable to enclose within your documentation a stamped self-addressed postcard with details of the documentation you have submitted so that that can be sent back to you by the CAO. In April and June, all of the assessments for both HERE and DARE are reviewed and assessed for suitability. And students are notified in late June. The reason for that date is that so that they're notified after the Leaving Cert has been completed. No one wants to get news of an unsuccessful application during the Leaving Cert. So this system has anticipated that, and the outcome of the application arrives in late June. Now, very shortly after the release of the information in relation to the success or failure of the application, a review and appeal application process opens up. So that's the end of June, the beginning of July. The window for that is quite narrow, and parents and students need to be aware of that, because generally speaking, term is out at that point, and it's over to you as parents to make sure that the appeal goes in and goes in on time. If you need support in that, the guidance counsellors are contactable through the school if you have any queries at that point in time. But hopefully we won't be in a situation where it will be necessary to make appeals. Then July is generally quiet time, and then we come to August. And if we have a traditional August in terms of Leaving Certs results and CEO offers, it should run like early August. Results are available. CEO offers then are made generally a week after the Leaving Cert results. Successful HEAR applicants will be notified by letter that they've been offered a HEAR place, and they'll also get an offer from the CEO which must be accepted fairly promptly, and they also have to accept HEAR offers of extra college support as part of this process. And an important part of accepting that offer of extra college supports is the understanding that it is mandatory to attend the HEAR and DARE orientation programs offered by the various colleges, and the very severe implications that can be attached to not attending those orientation programs. So we've seen situations where students have gone to their DEBs the night before the orientation program, but were in their seat in UCC or other colleges the following morning by 9:30 so as to attend the course. This is how strict the colleges take the orientation program. They want to support the students, so they have to have the students there. So I've mentioned DARE a number of times and said that it has a parallel application process to HEAR. But specifically then, let's look at DARE for a moment. And DARE is the Disability Access Route to Education. Again, a hugely valuable access program. It's part of the supplementary CEO application process. Who's it targeted? Well, the scheme is intended to support students with a diagnosed disability. Disabilities such as Asperger's syndrome, autism, ADD, ADHD, students who are blind or have visual impairment, students with dyspraxia, mental health conditions, neurological conditions, significant ongoing illnesses, physical disabilities, specific learning difficulties, and others which are certified by consultants. So a long list, and there's an awful lot more detail in the DARE documentation which is available on Access websites. The process of applying is also a more involved one than the HEAR application process, which tends to look for income forms and details like that. Whereas here there's a more detailed form that has to come from the student, and there's also a detailed form that has to come from the school. So this application takes a lot of time, and it is targeted very specific, I suppose, disabilities and challenges that students may have. So not everyone is suitable to apply through this route. Most colleges subscribe to the DARE scheme. WIT has recently joined it, which is a great addition for students. And so we'll talk a little bit more in the next slide about this as well. So just in the case of the HEAR process, the DARE process also gives applicants, successful applicants, a reduction of points for the courses they are applying for, and also gives them quite a lot of support in dealing with their disabilities while in college. Once again, the application date is the 1st of February to start the form and have it fully completed by the 1st of March. And we would prefer that all documentation would be lodged with the CEO by the 1st of March, so as to be there in plenty of time for the final date, which is the 15th of March. Now, as I said, this is an involved process. It takes some time. It has to be gotten right. There isn't any room for error in it because of the detail on the form. And so it's important that your daughters contact their guidance counsellors for details, as we want to do the best for the girls in this application process. Now, we've already screened most of the students who've come to us for their first careers appointment, so as to be aware of who's within that likely target group for applying for DARE. From your point of view, I put in a link at the bottom of this slide, which you can click before you move on to the next slide, which allows you to go to accesscollege.ie, where you can locate all of the relevant documentation in relation to any of these applications. So what we see here is a list of the participating institutions in the DARE scheme. It gives us the name of the institution, the websites of the institution, and the email for the DARE office in each of the institutions. So useful reference for your files. So looking at the timeline of events for the CAO application process, we've already covered most of these, so I'll just move quickly across them. The 5th of November is the opening of the CAO application season. The 20th of January, we all like a bargain, particularly after Christmas, is the date for the discounted application fee of €30. So you save a few bob on that. So I always recommend to the girls, make the application, get a number in the system. You can add some courses later on, but if you have your number in the system, you get the discount price if you apply before the 20th of January. The 1st of February is the normal application closing date. At the 5th of February is the online facility to change or amend course choices, and we'd also say to the girls that if you leave something out or you forget something, the CEO considers you to be a young adult applying to go to college. So when you make a mistake, it costs you. So every time you need to change something outside of the free time after the beginning of May until the 1st of August, 1st of July, they charge you. So it's important to get things right, and it's also an awful lot cheaper. So before the 15th of February, the CEO will send a copy of a statement of course choices out to students, and they should be watching for that. Other dates, the HPAD assessment date tends to come up there around the 22nd of February, and the 1st of March is the closing date for amending of course choices, and also the final date for the completion of the online HEAR and DARE forms. Continuing on, the 5th of March is the late application facility opening up there. 15th of March is the latest date for HEAR and DARE supporting documentation. All goes quiet then, and the 1st of May is the closing date for late applications. And the 5th of May is the online change of mind facility becoming available. Now this means that students who made their course selections up to and before the 1st of February are now in a position from the 5th of May down to the 1st of July to change their course choices and the order of those choices as many times as they like without incurring any fee. So it's a very useful facility, and it also means that the time from the 1st of February down to the 5th of May has been a time of reflection. The students have had time to think about and explore a little bit more after their pre's the particular courses that they initially thought they would like to be applying for, and now they're usually in a better position to amend those selections. And that goes up to the 1st of July, which takes them beyond the Leaving Cert exam period. And while it is good to finalize those choices by the 1st of July, it's not always a good idea to react to what you thought was a good or a bad performance in the exams, because your perception of how you did may be, I suppose, distorted or coloured by emotion at the time, and you may in fact have done an awful lot better than you realise. If you take a course off the form because you thought you did badly in an exam, when the results come out and perhaps you've done better than you thought you did, that course is no longer on the form for you to have as a choice. So it's something that students need to have a clear head and a calm head before getting involved in. We'd occasionally have students who want to apply to the States for college places, generally students who are heavily involved in sport. And as part of that process, it's important that they sit the SATs. And the SATs tend to take place in Dublin. The registration process is online at collegeboards.org. And I've included a link there for parents to take a look at this application process, even if it is just a matter of curiosity. For students interested in applying to the UK, we've already clarified that there were no students looking to apply for the 15th of October deadline, but for students who might be still considering the 15th of January deadline, those students need to come to the guidance counsellor to help them set up their accounts online and to work through their sections of the application process. We can give them some guidance around the writing of their personal statement and clarify the admissions tests that are involved for different courses that they may be applying to. So we've already looked at the National Framework of Qualifications, and I now want to apply this to the CEO application process. There are two separate sections on the CEO form. One section gives 10 course choices for level 6-7 courses, and the other section gives 10 choices for level 8 courses. Which course is level 6, 7 or 8 is clearly labelled within the CEO handbook in the yellow section of the handbook, where all the courses are named and their course codes are attached. What's very important here is to be aware that some of these courses are marked as restricted. And that means they must be included on the CEO form by the 1st of February. And the reason that they must be included and are therefore restricted to the 1st of February as an application date is that they involve some extra assessments by the colleges as part of the application process. So if someone is applying for music, for example, they may have to go and do an audition. If someone is applying for architecture or art or something like that, they may have to submit a portfolio. And that process tends to take place in March and April, where those applicants are given an opportunity to show their giftedness in their chosen areas. The course providers then tend to attach additional points to their applications. So if you see, for example, a course with 780 points, it's not that that's achievable directly through the Leaving Cert, it's the likely outcome of an assessment process where additional points have been added onto the applications of the particular candidates. So when the CEO makes an offer, they will potentially make an offer at level 6, 7 and also at level 8, remembering that the students have 10 choices at level 6, 7 and 10 choices at level 8. Now, working on the basis that the students have included courses in strict order of preference, in other words, their most desired course is number 1 and the least desired of the 10 is at number 10, the offer that they receive should be satisfactory in that nothing below that offer is more attractive than what they've already received. However, they obviously would prefer the courses above that, and it may be possible that in a subsequent round they could get a second or third round offer, which will lift them up to the first, second, or third choice that they've made. However, they are in a position to accept the first round offer and to reject subsequent round offers if they're happy on mature reflection with the place they've been offered in the first round. Students can accept their offers online. It's important that they don't allow the offer to lapse by not replying and accepting it within the timeline. Now, some very specific advice in relation to deferring a place. If you wish to defer an offer from a HEI, you do not accept the offer. Instead, you must email or write, preferably email because it's quicker and the timeline is very sensitive. So email the admissions office of the appropriate college that has made the offer to you. You must give them your name as it appears on the CO application. You must quote your CO application number and the course code of the offer you wish to defer, and set out the reason or reasons for the deferment. The applicants must mark the email deferred entry clearly, or write that on an envelope if they're posting it, so that this can be picked up very quickly. You can also check on the HEI's website what their policy is in relation to deferment. The college will then either send a letter or email you to let you know what their decision is. But what's very important in terms of your responsibilities is that the email must arrive at the admissions office of the institution at least, and in all likelihood, it should be earlier than 2 days before the reply date shown on the offer notice. The college is then in a position to make a decision and to contact you back directly. If the deferral is not granted by the college, you may then accept the offer for the current year, provided that you haven't passed the reply date. And that's why all of this is so time sensitive, and that perhaps email is a better way of contacting the admissions office for the HEI. It's very important that you send all communications about the deferral to the appropriate admissions office and not to the CO. Sometimes people come unstuck by communicating deferrals to the CO. No, send it to the admissions office of the relevant college. So a quick word on the points system. Generally in the CO system, the number of qualified applicants is greater than the number of places, and therefore that's why we have to have a selection system. The selection system used in third level colleges is the CO points system, and points are calculated from one sitting of the Leaving Cert only. The points total is calculated from the students' 6 best subjects, the best performance in their 6 subjects, which have come out as the highest results. Entry requirements, which are different to points requirements, but entry requirements for colleges, such as maybe a pass in maths or a pass in English, can be satisfied over more than one sitting of the Leaving Cert, with some notable exceptions such as medicine. For those of you who may not be too familiar with the point system, I've included a slide with the relevant points associated with relevant grades. Those points are not moving in exactly the same increments from one grade to another. And the reason for that is to try and avoid situations where students are selected for courses on third level colleges by random selection. So random selection is a situation where if there are more students equally qualified for the last number of places on the course than there are places available, random selection applied. So there is effectively a lottery taking place. So random numbers are assigned to each course choice for each student before the application process kicks off. And when a decision has to be made in relation to who gets the final places on the course, the CO will go to the candidates with the highest random numbers, which have been set before the application process has started. So it's completely fair insofar as no one wants to be in a random selection situation, but given that it may happen, even with the point system trying to help avoid that situation, this seems to be the fairest way for it to take place. So there is a random selection process, and that's limited by the changing in the points. Now, if you want to sit down with your daughter and work out the points that they may be anticipating or after their mocks, I've included a link to the points calculator on Careers Portal. You'll also notice that the points are calculated from the 6 best scores in the exams, and that students get bonus points for grades above H6 in maths, honours maths. One of the important things to be aware of in applying for courses is not alone do you have to achieve the required points level, but you also need to achieve the basic matriculation requirements, or what we might call course requirements. So matriculation requirements are the basic requirements to enter the college. So if you think of in terms of matriculation requirements get you into the gate of the college, course requirements get you into the course building, and CAO points get you a seat on the course. All of those hurdles have to be overcome before you have a successful application. So, for example, if you were applying for primary school teaching, you have to achieve a certain grade in Honours Irish. That's a course requirement. If you want to go to an NUI college, you have to get 2 H5s and 4 O3s or O6s or H7s. So these requirements are laid out in the form here on the slide, and because of this we're very careful about changes in levels for students, and students at senior level must come and talk to the guidance counsellors in advance of making a decision to change from one level in a subject to another. I've included now some details in relation to the cost of living away from home. If you're living at home, it's pretty much the same as it would have been in terms of accommodation costs and bills, but there may be additional costs for books and class materials, for travel that may be involved related to the course, and for the inevitable student social life, or perhaps the student charge, if it's not covered by the grant for you. However, when you move away from home, you incur accommodation costs and greater travel costs, which are associated with moving from home to the college and back. So this particular form here is an estimation for 2018-19 of the cost of living away from home. My experience would be that this is actually quite conservative, and that the cost can be greater. This is it broken down on a monthly basis, and you can see that the monthly living at home, whereas living away from home is quite different. My experience is that having a daughter in third level is that it's actually quite a lot more expensive, particularly if you go to Dublin. So accommodation costs can be in the region of 9,000 in Dublin. College fees in the region of 3,000. That's the student registration charge. Living costs at €80 a week to include transport to and from college, the buying of food and social life, all within the €80 mark. I know a lot of students would probably look at that and wonder, is that realistic? But you have to realise what's realistic from both a parent's point of view and a student's point of view. Some setup costs if they have to get a laptop or a printer or something like that. That setup cost isn't necessarily a recurring cost. The cost of their phone credit, the books and medical, and the travel cost there again if they have to do some course related travel, and particularly if they're on placement. So that suddenly jumps to quite a substantial figure and would necessitate parents putting away the children's allowance for an extended period of time. and also hopefully having access to the third level grants scheme. Another thing that's worth looking at in relation to applying to third level is that while that accommodation is very expensive, curiously enough, it tends to fill up very quickly. And so it's important for parents to be watching the college and private websites associated with accommodation for the college that your daughter is hoping to attend. The applications for those accommodations tend to open and close very quickly because they get filled up. And now some of the colleges have moved to a lottery system, which tends to be in February, March of the year of application. The students can apply for inclusion in the lottery system, and then they get the outcome of the lottery system. The problem with it is that while you're waiting for the lottery to take place, the private accommodation, which may be a little bit more expensive than the college accommodation, all fills up because people aren't prepared to take the chance on the lottery. So you have to hedge your bets on that and do your best to secure accommodation for your intended student for the next year. So hopefully your daughter has gotten a place now, and you've suddenly awoken to the cost implications of that place that she's so worthy to have received. So are there any financial supports available? And the answer is yes. The access schemes make some money available for HEAR candidates. The SUSI Grants scheme we'll take a look at, and the Student Assistance Fund, which is administered by the colleges, various scholarships which are available for students should they apply, and there are some other funds and student loans, of course, that can be applied for. So let's take a look at some of those now. For our students, WIT offers the Reach Access program and offers great support to the girls who qualify. They're obviously just like the HEAR scheme, which it mirrors. There are application criteria and they're laid out there in bullet points. I won't go through them all, but you can read through them, and I've given links to these sites so that you can take a look at it slowly yourself. So obviously, and this is one of the ones where girls curiously have fallen down at the first step, they want to make a Reach application, but they don't include a course in WIT on their CEO form by the 1st of February, and that's the application gone, because you can't apply for an access place for a course in a college that you haven't applied for. So you would think that was fairly logical that you would apply, but oftentimes students put down maybe a sample course on the form for the 1st of February and intend to amend it once the change of mind opens, and they neglect to remember that if you're applying for an access place, you must have courses in the college where the access place is available. And that needs to be on by the 1st of February. So that's that piece there, applying for the Reach application. And they all come through the guidance counsellors in the school. We provide the link to the student. We keep an eye on their application, then we have to support their application and we submit the application. So they're not on their own in that, and they work with us on an appointment basis to fill in that form. The next step for accessing funding is that the Reach scheme candidates would be expected to be able to make an application for the student grant scheme, that they would be eligible for that free fees initiative, and perhaps that they would have a medical card as well, and that they must be a student attending one of the secondary schools in the southeast which are considered Reach eligible schools. So a number of criteria that students have to fulfill before they qualify for the Reach scheme. And from those qualified, Waterford Institute of Technology select the successful candidates based on their application and their school references. So you can see that again there's a process involved here. Now, you may not qualify for the REACH scheme or the HERE scheme, but that doesn't mean that you won't be entitled to apply for the student grant scheme, which is administered through SUSI, the Student Universal Support Ireland platform. So I've included a couple of links here, the grant information link, which explains how the grant process works, and very importantly, the grant threshold and rates link. So that's what the income thresholds are and what rates are associated, what rates of grants are associated with those income thresholds. Now, while the student grant scheme is the main financial support scheme for students, there are other schemes such as the Student Assistance Fund, which we'll look at in a minute. There is the Fund for Students with Disability. There is the 1916 Bursary Fund, which is applied for once the students are registered in the college. And there are other bursaries and scholarships that students can apply for as well. A lot of this information can be gotten by following the link to studentfinance.ie. And take a bit of time to read through it and to make your plans for the applications you hope to make. If we can be of any help, drop us an email to our school emails. The girls will provide them for you, and we can have a chat with you to advise you. Now, here's a selection of some of the other financial bursaries and scholarships that are available. There are some for deaf schools available through the Department of Education. There are some scholarships for students with disability, the Vincent de Paul, and can also provide education and training bursary funds. There are funds available through the Irish Refugee Education Fund for people who have arrived into the Irish educational system as refugees. There's the North-South Postgraduate Scholarship Scheme if the girls go on to postgrad level. There's the Naughton Scholarship for people who are interested in science and technology. Very good scholarship to get, very prestigious. The Irish Taxation Institute Third Level Scholarship Programme. The Credit Union Member Scholarship Scheme, which is worth looking into for people who are members of the Credit Union. The National University of Ireland Awards, awarding excellence. The SIP2 Education and Development Support Scheme, and some of the financial institutions and are obviously offering student grants there. So there is a link there again for you to follow, which you can click and get some more information in relation to these. One particular scheme that's worth applying for, and we've had fantastic success with our students, is the WIT President Scholarship Programme. Where we have a great tradition, and we have two of our three students pictured here on the slide. Those being Dominica, who was awarded a President's Scholarship in 2018 for architecture, Rebecca, who was awarded a President's Scholarship for computer science in 2019, and Grace, who will be awarded her President's Scholarship when the award ceremony comes this year, because she was awarded it in June for engineering. So great credit to the girls for very, very high levels of achievement, and it also sets the potential for this year's Leaving Certs to apply to see if they could achieve success in the President's Award Scholarship, which we're very grateful to WIT. It has made such a difference to three of our students, and scholarship is worth up to €12,000 over their time in the college, 2,000 per year of study plus 500 per semester on a student card for buying books and food and things like that on campus. So a great opportunity, something that should be considered, and speak to your guidance counsellor in relation to that. So further in relation to financial support, students who are in college and who are experiencing financial difficulties in relation to maintaining themselves while in college can apply for support to the Student Assistance Fund. So this is a fund that's available through the college to support students in relation to books and class materials, rent or utility bills, food, essential travel, childcare costs, and medical costs. Students need to be aware of this. They are made aware of it through the school, and they need to access this support while they're in college, should they need it. So, in summary, we encourage students to look at all these schemes and to put the time in and effort to applying if they are eligible, because they can make a significant difference to the cost of third level education. For students applying for here and there, we've gone into quite a lot of detail in terms of completing those forms. And they will have the support of the guidance counsellors in the school to do that. The students in the end send the forms away, not the school, and so it is important that you as parents are fully engaged with your daughters in the application process. Again, the REACH forms for WIT will be completed between January and March, and those forms are sent off by the guidance counsellors in this instance, and which includes a reference from the school. Completed REACH forms need to be forwarded to your guidance counsellor so that this can take place. Scholarship applications are usually returned to the college or institution or the awarding body, and so all of these will be flagged on the guidance notice board and on the guidance website, which is attached to the school website. So worth having a look at those from time to time. The grant forms are completed from generally April across the summer online, and supporting documentation is then returned to Susie for assessment. Should your circumstances change between the point at which you apply and college beginning, or even after they've begun college, you can reapply for reconsideration based on change of circumstances. And students should be in contact with their guidance counsellor in relation to any queries that they have, and indeed as parents we're very happy to support you and to answer any of your queries or to direct you in the way of information that you may need should you send us an email or give us a quick call. We spent quite a bit of time talking about applications to third level, and that's because that application process is quite an involved process. But not all students want to make the immediate step to third level, and many students look at making an application to a college of further education, such as Waterford College of Further Education. So let's take a look for a minute about what's involved here and how they might make that application. So one of the pathways to progression to third level is through the Leaving Cert. Another is for students who are over 23 who make a mature application. But the third way, and a very successful way in recent years of applying to go to third level, is through what's known as the FETAC QQI Links scheme. So we're going to talk about that for a minute or two here and explain what happens. Now, students apply to third level directly to the CEO, but they also come in from PLC courses or FETAC courses. In 2017, there were 38 HEIs offering places to FETAC applicants, and currently 20% of the CEO applicants have a level 5-6 FETAC awardees on their courses. Now, what's typical then is of the pathway that a student such as your daughter might end up moving through in order to move to the third level from PLC course. Well, she would do her Leaving Cert or her Leaving Cert applied. She'd make an application to a PLC course such as Waterford College of Further Education. She would be interviewed for the course. Based on her interview, she would be made a provisional offer. Now, provisional offer means that they actually offer her a place but they have the condition that she must achieve certain minimum standards in her final exams in order to be admitted to the course. And generally, the students who are applying are very confident in achieving those results. They've worked hard, they've made every effort, and it would be rare enough that they wouldn't achieve what was required. So then they make that transition from Leaving Cert into a PLC course. They do their PLC course, and in our experience, students perform very well in those courses, having been well prepared in second level. So they then receive their maximum credits while they're on the course, which would be 120 credits, converting to 390 points on the CAO. They then apply from their course to the courses they're linked with. So there are specifically linked courses in colleges with courses on PLCs. We've explained that to the girls in terms of when they do a PLC course, they must check that the course code for the PLC course is recognized and accepted by the IT or the university for progression once they've finished the course. And I've included the link here so that you can take a look at that as an example from WIT. So their progression scheme and the links that exist. If you have any questions about that, you can give us a shout. Now, once again, not every student is applying through the CAO. Some may apply to private colleges. Be careful of the fees involved there. Some people want to take a training course, and so they apply to SOLAS, formerly known as FÁS, which they apply to directly after the Leaving Cert. And they go on a training program, and they receive an allowance while they're on the training program, and they get a lot of work experience while they're on that as well. And so that particular approach to follow-on education from the Leaving Cert is targeted at moving reasonably quickly into the workforce. There are also internship schemes which are available directly through FÁS. There are apprenticeships which are now offered in conjunction with colleges of further education and SOLAS. And so students have great opportunities. There is obviously the opportunity to get a job and to perhaps maybe take a gap year if you have the luxury of being able to do that. Not so much travel going on this year. There was in previous years. Saving the turtles or whatever you choose to save, but then for some there's the possibility of a repeat if they haven't achieved what they wanted to achieve and they believe it doesn't represent their best efforts. That could be because of health matters at that, but hopefully that won't be necessary. But in the scale of things, a one-year repeat to achieve what you really want in the scale of a lifetime is a very small adjustment. So for options, I would suggest checking into Qualifax and checking into Careers Portal. The girls will be able to take you through that. In our experience, parents who chat to their daughters and who explore possible plans and courses with them get better outcomes. It's important that you have a healthy interest in the work they're involved in so that you can support them, and a healthy interest in their future plans. It's important that there is a synergy between their hopes and dreams and your expectations as well. It's never a happy situation when a student has worked very, very hard to pursue their dreams, and it's a late conversation with a parent to tell them that that's not going to work out because of financial reasons or because plans haven't been put in place. So always best to have these conversations early so that everybody is on the same pitch in terms of expectations. The girls also appreciate the fact that the parents are there to support them, to listen to them. Sometimes it's making a cup of tea, sometimes it's having a chat, Sometimes it's providing a few tissues and a supportive shoulder. But they all move through these challenging phases with your support and with support of ourselves in the school. If we can be of any help in terms of supporting the girls, please do not hesitate to contact us. That's what we're here for. We've also included a series of websites such as Qualifax Careers Portal, Student Finance. I've gathered them all together here at this point just to save you going back through the presentation. Those are all active links and you can click on them. They'll bring you to the relevant websites. And here are some more. At this point, we're just about to sign off, and I'd like to thank you for watching the presentation. I hope it's been useful. At least maybe it may start some conversations for you at home. It'll also serve as a springboard for references which you may find useful. And once again, should you need any support or advice, or even if you just want to bounce something off for one of us, give us a shout. We're always happy to help, and we can make this journey together a more successful and supported one for your daughters who are our students. Thank you very much.